Let me silence my phone.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Faith Chats. I'm your host, Andrew Burnett, and as always, our topic is faith, family, freedom, and America. Today, when I talk about movies and I think about movie critics, my friend Dr. Ted Baehr does an awesome job with Movie Guide, and I'm excited to have him here on the program today.
I'm excited to be with you today, Andrew. Thank you so much.
So I hear you have a new book out called The Golden Age of Hollywood and Broadway. Share with us a little bit about what inspired you to write your book.
Well, it's my 47th book that I've written and contributed to. I'm reaching for it right now, so I'm going to get it and put it in front of me. But it's about my father, who was starred in 62 movies. My mother starred in some very good movies, and he won the box office award in 1936, and then he starred on Broadway in 46 when I was born, all the way up to 86. He starred in Showboat in 46 and 86 it was in Whoopi. So I just thought it's a great overview of what Hollywood was like during the Golden Age and what Broadway was like during the Golden Age. You know, Broadway in the last few years has gone downhill in many different ways. I'm on the board of a theater there, so I know Broadway well, and I know the movie business. If you want to, we can go back to the 1890s because I know almost all of the movie business going back. So my family's been in the movie business for since 1926. So I guess it's almost 100 years.
So, in what ways to you has Hollywood changed since the Golden Age?
Well, in the Golden Age, you had major studios that were in control. During the 1920s, movies got very debauched, which people forget. But three men, Joseph Breen, Martin Day Lord, and Martin Quigley and Daniel Day Lord, got together and said to the movie companies, "You're doing very badly. The English movies were doing better, French movies were doing better, German movies were doing better." So he said, "We can help you reach the biggest box office." And they showed him the church, and within the church box office, and from 1929 to 1933, they flipped Hollywood around so that by 1933, 100% of the movies were movies that you could take your family to, Andrew. And that lasted until the 1965 when the church film office, the Protestant film office, I inherited all their files, and the Catholic Legion of Decency and the Jewish Defense League were dominant in Hollywood. They all shut down. The Catholic office moved to New York. Henry Herx, I knew him well. The Protestant office, as I said, the National Council of Churches shut it down, and the head of Paramount Pictures said, if you take the salt from the meat's going to rot. And by 1968, 3 years later, you went from 100% what would have been G-rated films like The Sound of Music and The Greatest Story Ever Told to 82% R-rated movies with the first Sex and Satanism movie. So many years ago, I did The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe on CBS television, and I said, we've got to start using that system again. And when we started in 85, the movie guide, we started the ministry in 78, 1978. There was only one movie with positive Christian content, and most of the movies, if you saw a Christian, he had a collar on and he had a knife in his hand. And now, about 69% of the movies at least have a positive prayer or sermon or funeral or whatever else with a positive reference to Jesus. And the biggest box office movies are the same. So we're getting back there to the point that we can see more good coming out, and that's because we do what they used to do during the golden age. The other thing about your question, it's a very complex question, is that stars were owned by the studios. My father went in, his name was Ted Baehr, and Warner Brothers gave him the name Robert Allen. And in part, they owned that name, so they would lend him to another studio. So you worked for the studios. And the studios wanted to make sure that none of the people were giving him a bad reputation. So they got Errol Flynn under control because Errol Flynn was out of control. Um, and several other actors after the debacle of Fanny Arbuckle. So the Hollywood of those days was a Hollywood that wanted to be perceived as being moral, as being good, as not being salacious, not having sexual content. And when, as I said, when the church left, the head of Paramount Pictures, a Jewish man, Sam Engel, said, if you take the salt from the meat's going to rot. So the church left Hollywood. Hollywood didn't leave the church. And now what we do best, not what we do, because what we do is work with the studios to get better movies, but what a lot of people do is they mumble and grumble instead of being witnesses to Jesus Christ and helping these people to understand that the good triumphs at the box office.
I believe it was Snoop Dogg that recently said he was tired of taking his grandkids to the movies of today, the animated movies, because there was so much LGBT uh, filth in them. And that's just a sad day that we've reached with that.
Well, there's people are misperceiving. The studios themselves don't try to do that. They try to do broad audience movies, and often they do Christian movies. The movie that did best last year was a movie that had biblical characteristics. When I went to a small dinner party with the producer, Dan, he'd come up, he'd been to our Movie Guide Awards. He said, I'm a Christian. The director was a Christian. The writer was a Christian. And the moral of the movie is the joy of the Lord is our strength. And what it is a young girl who Joy, during Inside Out 2, Joy became her guide. And then in the second one, she reaches puberty and anxiety takes over and she, commits some bad behavior. But Joy has to go to the edge of her consciousness, prays, and gets back and gets anxiety under control. So the joy of the Lord. And then the second big, that did $2,100,000,000. The second biggest movie did $1 billion at the box office, and it was a Pilgrim's Progress story told Mufasa. It was the producer of it, who gets my Bible study verses, is a Christian. And then the next one, Dune, the producer is a good friend of mine. And when I was in Sydney, Australia, speaking 9 times in 4 days, he wanted me to go to dinner with him and his wife to announce that they were going to have a baby, which was good because we were telling them they should have babies because I'm a big advocate for babies. I've got 18 grandchildren. So we see a lot of good stuff going on. Now, the independent movies are 60% of the movies, but those are the movies that the secular press likes because, they see too many movies, they have no standards, and they want to be shocked. And those are the movies that get Academy Awards. For instance, Honora, which was the movie that won the Academy Award, made $32 million at the box office. The movie that I just mentioned that we liked, that the producer, the writer, the director was a Christian, made $2 billion. So the Academy Awards awards movies that are snarky and small, and don't go to them. So, but if you want to know what to see, go to movieguide.org and get the Movie Guide app, and it's all free and it's all nonprofit, and it'll help you.
I hear a lot of Christians in today's church grumble about today's entertainment. If you could suggest some movies to start off with, and how can the church better improve Hollywood?
Well, the church needs to first support the good and not the bad. When you hear them grumbling, I mean, I often hear people, I saw this movie and it was terrible. And I said, why did you go see this movie? You could have gone to movieguide.org and found out that it was terrible before you went to spend your money. So spend your money wisely, choose the good and reject the bad. And in every one of our movie reviews, we've got a little section that tells you who to write at the studio to commend or not. When you write them as a Christian with great love. But you're right. What you've said is something very brilliant. And probably, I don't know whether you intended it or not, but the church was good news. That a small group of disciples overthrew the Roman Empire. It took them a couple hundred years, but they turned the Roman Empire right side up because they were always preaching good news to the women that were locked in their homes by their husband and not allowed to go out. They preached freedom in Christ. They preached good news for the babies to be rescued. They preached good news for the elderly to be taken care of. So somehow in the 1950s, I think, the church started speaking bad news. Now, the press is the harbinger of bad news. That's what it wants because if it says a hurricane is coming, I don't know where you are located, Andrew, but if you, they, it was really funny last year. They said a hurricane was coming to Los Angeles, and then I think it got 1 inch of water. But the fear factor is what gets people to addicted to
Right.
to the news, and that's almost what we do. The end, it's horrible. The world is falling apart. Chicken Little, it's not falling apart. And the good news is, one, we've got, a peace treaty in Gaza. Two, we got good movies out there. And three, don't complain. Look for the good. Choose the good. Support the good. Let the good do well. And people do that because you can't make $2 billion unless you have a lot of people choosing the good over the bad.
And you hear from certain Christians like there's a lot of witchcraft coming out of Hollywood. There's this, there's that. Why focus on that? Why not promote the good movies that are out there?
You're brilliant and you're right. Let me tell you that the studios tend to produce positive movies. This year, I'm going to do a banquet in a week, and the positive movies are one of the biggest movies for Warner Brothers. Love triumphs over greed. One of the biggest, the most pro-life movie I've ever seen in my life. Fantastic Four is the mother standing up and protecting her baby and saying, "I'm going to protect my baby," and actually winning a group of people who wanted to kill her baby. It sounds like the world that we're living in. But that's Fantastic Four, made almost $500 million at the box office. So the good movies have good messages because the studios have to pay their employees. Warner Brothers has 60,000 employees. You can't pay them unless your movies are making money. 40% of the movies are made by the studios. 60% are made by independents. Now, some of those are Christian movies, which are good, but a lot of them are snarky, bad, miserable movies, independents that can't make a good movie. But for some reason, they get good reviews. I know why they get good reviews, because one guy who was reviewing movies, and we were having a dialogue like you and I are having, only I was in his studio. He said he was the morning show in Canada, the Today Show. He said, "I've got daughters. I agree with you, but I see so many movies that I just want to see. I want to be shocked." So a lot of these reviewers see so many movies that they want to be shocked, but you don't want to be shocked. So if you stop looking at the independent films, except for maybe Sony Affirm and The Chosen, etc., and look at the good, you'll see a lot of good out there.
Do you think that Hollywood will ever get back to the days of sitcoms like I Love Lucy and Happy Days and the Andy Griffith Show and just good, clean shows like that?
Well, television pretty much is dead on arrival. It's gone. You've got streaming. And what streaming does, and I'm sorry for my eye because I've got Bell's palsy and I'm just recovering, so please forgive me. But anyway, Bell's palsy is when half your face freezes. Anyway, because TV used to be three major networks, and they were getting the audience by doing the good, the true, and the beautiful. The Supreme Court actually struck that down in 1979. The Supreme Court started the destruction of TV. Now you've got streaming, and streaming doesn't work the way television did. Television was broad audience. Um, Streaming is narrow audience. They want to reach different audiences. So they want to make movies for women. Whatever you, good, bad, true. They want to make movies for African Americans. My wife was from Argentina, so they want to make uh, movies, Spanish-speaking films. They want to make Korean films. I just had two people from Singapore go over. They're making a film about China. So they want to reach all these little groups, including the groups that are perverse and the groups that want the bad. So they just are doing everything out there. Again, the numbers make a difference, and you need to choose the good, and you need to look at Movie Guide and choose what's worthwhile watching. And you're going to send a message with every time you choose in the good as opposed to the bad.
So, what are some of the good TV shows and movies out there right now that you would recommend?
Oh well, There's a lot of them, and most of them are Christian. Some of them you don't recognize as Christian, but they are. Bluey is one of the most popular series ever, and it's made by Christians in Australia. The Chosen, of course, is made by my friend Dallas Jenkins, whose father I knew for many, many years and was a wonderful man. And Dallas has been to our award ceremonies several times. The Irwins, John Irwin is now making, the House of David. He's on his second season, and they're very good. But there's a lot of them. I mean, we could spend hours talking about the good. There's a new Chosen Adventure, an animated series that was prompted by a friend of mine who got in touch with Dallas. My friend had made $14 billion at the box office. There's actually there's a lot of them. There's just too many to talk about at any one time.
So, what was your earliest memories of acting when it comes to your dad and mom that you write about in your book?
Well, I anytime you're the child of an actor, you have to do. I hated acting, so I'll admit that right away. But I had to do it. I was on the Howdy Doody show. I was on the earliest game shows. I was doing commercials for the Mickey Mouse Club in the 1950s, for Mattel toys, for Aurora toys, etc. So I did those things. Actually, the residuals that came out of those paid for my Dartmouth College career. And then I went to Cambridge and University of Bordeaux and Toulouse and University of Munich. So those commercials did a lot for me. Not that I like doing them, but I remember I spent a lot of time when my father was in Andy Mame. He played Babcock, which was one of the three male leads in Andy Mame. It was the longest running show on Broadway, and I, I understudied for the boy that was the star of Andy Mame, Patrick Dennis, and then you know, I was there almost every night, and then there were a flood of people, and you go to Sardi's afterwards, and you wait for the reviews from the newspapers, and it was, and also you had more camaraderie. I guess a better way to say what I should say to you is that I had a friend, I saw him the other day. He was head of production at Columbia Pictures, and he was retiring. And I said, "Why are you retiring?" He said, "It's just not fun anymore." In the days that I'm talking about in the book, the cast and crew worked together. They went out to dinner together. They were friends. Now everybody's isolated. So he was telling me on one of his movies, the star has to have a trailer, then the co-star needs a trailer, then the co-star's makeup person needs a trailer, then the makeup person dog needs a trailer. So nobody's talking to each other. Everybody's got their own trailer. Everybody's sort of a prima donna, and that wasn't the case during the golden age. I mean, my father in the book talks about Clark Gable and Cary Grant and people, and you saw them, you knew them, you worked with them. It wasn't like it was going to be some isolated condition.
And it was like my grandfather's hero. He loved John Wayne.
Yeah, John Wayne was after my father, really great, wonderful person. My uncle played cards with him quite often. Um, I, I tell people all the time, I teach. I spoke 9 times and sometimes at colleges in Sydney, Australia in 4 days. And I spoke in a school. This is what happened in Washington, D.C. And I was mentioning, because fame is fleeting. My father's fame is fleeting. Who was the biggest star in the 1940s? And they named a street after him, and it was Robert Taylor. And then I mentioned a couple of other stars, Rex Harrison, who starred in, My Fair Lady, etc., who I knew. And then I mentioned John Wayne, and the students looked perplexed. None of them knew John Wayne. So Andrew, you're portraying your age because people don't even remember John Wayne today. That was enough for me to say, I got to write this book.
Wow. And those, for me, I'm an old soul. I like the old entertainment, the old clean entertainment, because, it just has a wholesome message. I'd rather watch that than this RuPaul's drag race and this other stuff that's on TV that nobody cares about.
Yeah. Well, if people stopped watching RuPaul, they wouldn't make any money. So, and Jimmy Kimmel. So to stop it,
Yeah, I don't know why ABC let Jimmy Kimmel back on TV when he didn't even make a proper apology.
I agree with you.
And I mean, it just shows the state of the world that we're in and the favoritism of the people.
Well, there's several. Uh, that's a that issue. I'm not going to take on the Jimmy Kimmel issue because that's whatever they decide. But the pressure on studios. There's a book called um, Target Prime Time. I've got a copy here. There are about 1,200 lobbying offices, advocacy offices, we call them in Hollywood. You've got, the Marine Corps. One of my sons is a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps, in the reserves. You've got one of my friends that teaches our class that we have was with the Defense Department. Every branch of the armed forces has an office here and tries to get their branch represented in the movies. Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, all the drinks, all the the toiletry products, all the other products, and there are about 30 gay groups in Hollywood. They hate each other, and then there are about 20 Muslim groups, and then there are about 9 Jewish groups, and there's only one Christian group that is listed with the guilds, and that's us. So the church forgot what advocacy is like. If you go to Washington, you have buildings just occupied by people that are lobbying the government for whatever they're doing, and you do the same thing in Hollywood. So the lobbying mentioned Target Prime Time. The way we do it is we show audiences, we show the studios how you can make more money by doing good. For instance, last year movies with Christian content averaged about 65 million, and movies with anti-Christian averaged 10 million. So, in other words, you do 6 times more money by being pro-Christian. Movies with no nudity averaged about 35 million, and movies with nudity averaged practically nothing. So, you put nudity, you make less money. Now, our group is to show what we do is show that the good triumphs over the evil. What the LGBT crew GLAD group did when they started out, almost the same year we did, is they went to the offices of ABC. You mentioned ABC, and they went up to the top floor, and they went into the chairman's office, and they took his furniture, broke the windows, and threw all of his stuff out the window on this top floor of this tall skyscraper. They use intimidation. They use, meanness and cruelty. So that's their approach. Our approach is to show them how to do better at the box office and how to love. So the question is, you're, they're going to have to, they will peter out because intimidation cannot last forever. And I would be willing to give you, I don't wager and I'm not a gambling man, but I'm willing to say that Kimmel will disappear sooner than later. But the intimidation is violent on the side of the bad people, and it's always been that way. The only way, I've debated with Muslims in Kiev and in Greece. If you're, read the Quran, there's four ways to bring somebody to Allah. Number one, convince them. Number two, bribe them. Number three, torture them. Number four, kill them. As a Christian, we don't do any of that. We have the Holy Spirit. We present the truth, and the Holy Spirit takes over from there, and we don't have to torture, kill, maim, mutilate, bribe other people. So we don't need violence to get what we want. They need violence, and the more they do violence, the more they show just how bankrupt they are.
So, when's the next upcoming Movie Guide Awards and how can we vote and get involved?
Well, you should come to the awards as press, Andrew. It's on February 6th. It's a 4-day event. It's a wonderful event, and we already have some good movies in there. So, if you see a good movie, just tell me about it. We'll make sure we review 100% of the movies that open in 750 theaters or more, so we get almost 100% of them. So, just let me know what you like.
Well, Dr. Ted, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you, my friend.
I appreciate you. You're great, and that's a wonderful program. And those were good questions. Thank you.
Hang on one second before you go.